on Facebook, a friend found me, somebody, I call him a friend, I haven't seen him since 1987, but he tracked me down on Facebook, and I'm glad he did. We were at university together. And like I said, 1987 was the last time I laid eyes on him, and according to his Facebook photograph anyway, he still has all his hair. Really annoying, because since 1987 I have lost a considerable amount of hair. So Sean Webb still has his hair, I don't. Do I have less hair because Sean Webb has more? Does Sean have more hair because I have less? No, by the way, not a rhetorical question. The answer is no. There's no connection between my hair and Sean Webb's hair whatsoever. He does not have more because I have less. So hold that thought and think about what Stone says about metaphor. Obviously, I'm using a metaphor here, and I'm using it to set a boundary. I'm using it as a form of political reasoning, because remember, we're talking this week, as we have been for the last few weeks, about markets and inequality and policies that purport to affect or reduce inequality. So when you've watched the two videos that I posted on Plato, and you've looked at the discussion board question, picking up on last week's question regarding Fruit Loops and deodorant, then read the concluding chapter of that book by Neuman and Wascher. So it's just one chapter. It's pretty short. I hope you enjoy it. It's about the minimum wage, the efficacy of minimum wage policies. And what they did, remember, is they remember, you may not have read it yet. What they did was they did a comprehensive review of a lot of articles, peer-reviewed articles by economists and the like, who looked at the effect of the minimum wage. And they've been studying this for a few decades. So the two authors who wrote this chapter that I've asked you to read have studied the minimum wage themselves for decades, and they engaged in this literature review about articles on the minimum wage. And they concluded that, well, read the chapter and then you'll see what they concluded. And think about the question that I pose, which is this: what, if anything, would persuade people who are in favor of the minimum wage to change course? If the authors are right, if the conclusions of the authors are correct, what, if anything, remember this thing came out in 2008, this is not a new article, not a new book, but if they're right, and you wanted to take this to someone who's an advocate for the minimum wage, or minimum wage increases, or a living wage, what would it take to persuade them to change their minds, if anything? Is it possible to do that? Or has this particular policy assumed totemic significance, that regardless of its effectiveness or ineffectiveness, it can't be changed because it's now effectively worshipped? It has sort of a talismanic, totemic value to it. So think about that question, and we'll come back to that in class. By the way, one of the things I really like about the concluding chapter is the subheading that asks, can 665 economists be wrong? Which is the kind of thing that can only have come from an economist, right? Only an economist could write that without a trace of irony. So have some fun with this article. I think you'll enjoy it. When I read that subheading, I thought of the famous prediction of Paul Krugman back in 1998, when he said, by 2005 or thereabouts, it will become clear that the impact of the internet on the economy was no greater than the impact of the fax machine. And a few years later, he won the Nobel Prize for the Economic Sciences. So can 665 economists be wrong? Well, yeah, it doesn't mean that economists are wrong all the time, obviously. But think about it. Think about it. And let's talk about the whole thing: minimum wage and fighting poverty, changing the inequality of outcomes that markets produce through policy initiatives, and how to measure their efficacy, how to measure their effectiveness, and the trade-offs. Okay, look at the discussion board thread that I posted about bakers in Venezuela. It's not about Fruit Loops, not about deodorant. It's about pastries. Do you think that the government should be in charge of deciding pastries. Look forward to the discussion.